Goodreads just released a list of the best books of the year so far, and I think it's a good idea for us to take a look. I've been doing the readings of the Goodreads Choice Awards for the past 3 years now, and last year I started doing predictions too. I did the video reading the winners of all categories and also reading all nominees for fantasy. And this year I already did a video where I make a list of a bunch of new releases of fantasy that I think may be featuring as nominees this year. And then when I saw this list, I realized I could get some hints of what books will be nominee at the end of the year. So I'm gonna go to my computer and we're gonna scroll the list and see what titles are being mentioned and how many of the books mentioned in the 2023 version of that list ended up in the Goodreads Choice Awards at the end of the year. So let's start with the 2023 list that is quite different from the one that we have this year. Here we have the most popular fantasy, sci-fi, and horror books of the year so far. It was published June 16, and it lists 16 books for each category. Of these 16, let me see, 1, 2, 3. Only 3 didn't show up in the final list of nominees in November. So I feel very stupid because I haven't seen this list until like yesterday, when I realized that if we had a list this year, probably we had a list for 2023. I did a predictions video without even knowing that this list existed. If I had knew back then, I would have put together a different list of titles. And the fun thing is that I think 2 of these titles, like Fort Wing and The Foxglove King, they were nominees. They just didn't show up in the fantasy list because they created a different list. And I'm not sure if Foxglove was, let me open here, if it was Romantasy. Yeah, it was Romantasy. Through this list, we could already figure out the nominees. I feel like in the sci-fi, kind of the same thing happened. All of this were in the final list. So we have a big list here. And that's quite different from the one that we have for 2024. Because the list is very short this year. Maybe it's for a reason. So we don't have spoilers of what the nominees will be. They didn't specify the categories or the genres. I don't remember how many we have. Let's see, contemporary and historical fiction. I'm pretty sure this is going to be nominee, and maybe it's even the winner, because Christine Hanna is a very known author and I feel like everybody likes her books. I read 2 of them. I read The Nightingale and The Four Winds. Yeah, it's The Four Winds. My favorite is The Four Winds. I have The Great Alone, but I didn't read yet. And The Women. I am a little reluctant to read this book because it's about, I think it's about the Second World War, and I'm a little exhausted of this kind of story. But I probably will have to read if I'm gonna do the winners video again. I think this is a strong contester. I already read Tom Orange, but I don't know anything about this book. The only one I know is the Christine Hanna. Then we have mystery thriller. I already saw this cover a lot in my timeline. Freda McFadden, it's not a surprise. She was the winner last year, and at least it's a different series than The Housemaid. I read the first one and the second one, and the third one I didn't read yet. Amy Tintera, I already saw her name being mentioned a bunch of times, but I never read anything from her. Home is Where the Bodies Are. I've been seeing a lot of people reading. How to Solve Your Own Murder is a nice title. The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. I read Royal and Her Royal Highness. I'm not sure if the other ones were published. Let me see. Rebel Bell. I'm not sure. Maybe Haxhaw? Back in the day. Maybe her books are coming out through a different publisher. They're not the same from this series because I don't think they publish thrillers very often. Maybe just missed the release. And this one, The Last Murder at the End of the World, is the same author of The 7 Half Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I read that book a few years ago. I feel like Rootware has a new release every year, but here in Brazil it doesn't have much praise. I think I have one Rootware. Yeah, I have The Turn of the Key, but I didn't read yet. Then Darling Girls by Sally Hapworth. And then we reach fantasy novels. I think the first one's not a surprise to anyone. It's Lee Bardugo, The Familiar. I read this book last month. No, it was not May, it was April, as a buddy read with a friend. It was not what I was expecting. I heard a bunch of things about this book. And one of the things is that The Familiar, it will be a vampire novel. And we have a creature that has some resemblance with a vampire, but I don't think it met the expectation. I thought it was okay, but it was nothing exceptional. But she's the winner of the 2023, so maybe her name will be enough for that. I'm a huge fan of Lee Bardugo, don't get me wrong. It was like a 3 stars for me. And then we have Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands by Heather Fawcett. We had the first book in this series trilogy now last year. And I don't know why, when I did the list of the books to follow the release this year, I didn't put this one in the list because it's so obvious. It's so obvious. Yeah, look how high is the ratings. So of course this book's gonna show up at the list. This was just me being stupid, I think, with this one. And then The Book of Doors by Garrett Brown. I didn't heard a single thing about this book. It was not published here or announced by any publisher, and I don't think I saw any booktuber talking about it. So this is one of the books that I'm gonna have to try to fit in a TBR before November. And look at the rating. It's above 4 and I already have more than 16,000 ratings, so it's probably going to be a nominee. And it's a debut novel full of magic, adventure, and romance. The Book of Doors opens up a thrilling world of contemporary fantasy for readers of the Midnight Library. I'm not a big fan of the Midnight Library. The Invisible Life of Ed LaRue, okay. And the Night Circus. I'm a big fan of the Night Circus. It went for the worst recommendation for me to the best recommendation for me. And any modern story that mixes the wonder of the unknown with just a tinge of darkness. Well, I like it. 416 pages. Yeah, I'm gonna have to add this to my TBR. Oh, I just realized that the cover was not showing up at the screen. I'm sorry for that. But yeah, I'm gonna add to my TBR and try to read before the list is released, because I think if I keep up with these books and maybe a few more that I have in my personal list, I'll be okay. Last year I had to read 16 books to complete the 20. It was not a fine experience to do that in a row, so I'm trying to get ahead of this year. Okay, let's come back here. Then we have The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I already read The Tainted Cup. It was a 5 stars for me. I love this book. I gave a few 5 stars this year, but a passionate 5 stars? I think it was just 2 stories, and The Tainted Cup was one of them. No, maybe 3 stories. But one of them, I have like a side note, and I'm really happy this book's here because The Tainted Cup didn't make the final cut. I'm gonna be very angry. Let me see how are the ratings. Oh, it's high. Look at this. We have 12,000 ratings, and The Book of Doors has already 16. So this book's more famous than The Tainted Cup, but I never heard of it. Yeah, I'm a little surprised about this. It wasn't published here in Brazil, but I do watch a lot of international book content. Not even in the most anticipated releases, I saw this one. Okay. The next one is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. This one is in my list. I didn't read yet. Let's see when it was released. I did a physical list so I can keep track of it. Yeah, it was February. I was not sure if this one will be fantasy because it sounded like could be horror or maybe being historical. I don't know. I had this impression. And then we had this one called A Short Walk Through a Wide World by Douglas Weatherbeck. And it says, think Ed LaRue meets Life of Pi. So it's probably a book that will wake some deep feelings. Let's see what it says about it. For those who believe the journey is the destination. Oh, as a fan of Brandon Sanderson, Journey Before Destination. This debut novel offers an interesting premise. Aubrey Torville must keep moving, quite literally, or she will die a painful death. Aubrey? I'm not sure. Can only stay in one place for a few days. and she can never return to the same place twice. Aubrey's journey begins in Paris, 1885, and continues around the world several times. Interesting. I'm gonna put it on my list too. Let's see the ratings. Oh, this one's not going as well as the other ones. 3.6. This one needs to hold to be a nominee. And it's also a debut. We have 6 books. 3 of them were already on my list. This not being my list is just me being stupid. And 2 that I never heard about it. The Book of Doors and The Short Walk Through a Wide World. I'm not gonna prioritize this one. I'm just gonna try the other one. And then we go to romantasy novels. I was curious to see if Sarah J. Maas, who is a huge winner of Goodreads Choice Awards in the fantasy category, would be now reallocated to romantasy. And she was. So we have House of Flame and Shadow, probably the winner here. A Fate Inked in Blood was one of my predictions. I didn't know if it would show up in fantasy or romantasy. A Touch of Chaos by Scarlett St. Clair. I already read one of her books. When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. As the first book in her new series, Sarah A. Parker's When the Moon Hatched invites readers to get acquainted with an innovative new fantasy world. If nothing else, the series that details, I think, is particularly cool origin story regarding dragons and orbital physics. Goodreads reviewers are also praising other core strengths: a strong and sassy female protagonist, an original new magic system, and searing hot love story. Okay, the first part grabbed my attention, the sassy protagonist and the hot love story, not as much. I'm not a big fan of romance, and it's a romantasy, okay, I understand that. And if House of Flame and Shadow will be the winner, I'm not reading it. I was done with the first one. Sci-fi novels. Anybot? Never heard of. The Ministry of Time? Never heard of. Baby X, A Sharefully Refuse. The Other Valley, never heard of it. Beauty Land, never heard of it. I don't think any of these titles been published here or even announced in Brazil. I think I need to read more sci-fi, but I found it difficult to pick between the international titles. They're not published here because I feel like people I follow don't read as much releases as do for fantasy. So I don't see much of the new releases being commented. Maybe I need to follow new people. Then we have horror novels. Murder Road, Dreadful, My Darling Dreadful Thing. Oh, that's a cool cover. Indian Burial Ground. Yeah, I heard of this one. Diavola. I also heard of this one. I think it was a 5-star for Gabby Reads. The Angel of Indian Lake. I read the first one in this trilogy this year and I really enjoy it. I need to keep reading. Oh, romance novels. Funny Story by Emily Henry. I hope this one's the winner because it was... I told you guys I didn't have as much 5-star this year and like really 5 stars. This one was a really 5-star to me and it was quite surprising because Funny Story was the book number 6 that I read from her, and the one that I have liked the most was Book Lovers, but it wasn't a 5-star. And then this one caught me by surprise. Then we have Abby Jimenez, Just for the Summer, Bright by Ali Hazelwood. Yeah, I already read Bright. I like it. Fun Grew Down by Tessa Bailey. The Rule Book by Sarah Adams. The Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. Christina Lauren, The Paradise Problem. I feel like there's a few authors here that are always being mentioned. A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams. Young adult novels, If Only I Had Told Her. Heartless Hunter by Kirsten Ciccarelli. I read a few things by Kirsten Ciccarelli, but not this one. This one was already published here. Then we have The Reappearance of Rachel Pride by Holly Jackson. Oh, isn't that the same series? The latest mystery from UK author flips the usual script by telling the story of a mysterious reappearance. Oh, it's not the same series, but it's the same author. I read just the first one, the first book in the series. It's getting an adaptation now, and I intend to read the rest of the series. The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. Okay, makes sense. The Tempest of Tea of Hafsa Faisal, Where Sleeping Girls Lie. I think this one is already announced to be published in Brazil, and this one I think recently came out or is in pre-order. Then we have nonfiction. The Age of Magical Overthink, Notes on Modern Irrationality. I don't know this one. Sociopath, a Memoir, I heard about it. Super Communicators by Charlie Duhigg, never heard of it. Knife, Meditation After Attempted Murder by San Hoshidi. Oh yeah, I read Victory City for the 2023 nominees. I learned about this. Oh, so now he wrote a nonfiction. Interesting. My Side of the River by Elizabeth Camarillo Gutierrez. Grief is for People by Sloane Crossley. It's about grief. The House of Hidden Meanings by RuPaul. I thought this will be a big title for this category, but I don't think with everything that happened it will be. I'm not sure. The Demon of Unrest by Eric Larson. Oh, Eric Larson. One in a Millennial by Kate Kennedy. There's a lot of books in this category, right? Slow Productivity, The Anxious Generation, and that's it. That's all of the list. So what can we take from this list? Less books than the past year. For me, a few surprises. And I think it's a good thing for someone who is planning to do some content about the award, that I already have some notion, some perspective of what the nominees will be, even for the different categories, and not just the fantasy, because I also read the winners of each category, or maybe not every category. I think I read 11 for the 2023 edition, and I always arrive in that video with a few reads already done. But I am focusing in the fantasy because it's a huge amount of books. And if we're talking the things that are published in Portuguese and the things that are not published in Portuguese, the difference is even bigger. So that's something for me to pay some attention. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this little investigation. And I want to give you guys a mission to write here in the comments what other books, especially of fantasy, that you guys are following the release, that you think that maybe will show up at the nominees list at the end of the year. I'm gonna have to do some adjustments to try to fit the ones I didn't know, to try to get ahead of this list. And if you liked the video, I encourage you to subscribe if you're not yet, leave a thumbs up, and we see each other in the next one. Bye.